Hello everyone and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel.
Is Rich free to follow Brooke after Taylor turns down his marriage proposal? Rich Forrester might be free to pursue Brooke Logan when Taylor Hayes turns down his marriage proposal. Taylor would not be challenging Ridge about his continued love for Brooke if she were not insecure, despite her desire to act otherwise. Despite Ridge's constant insistence that Taylor is his way ahead, Taylor obviously has some reservations about it. Now that Ridge is aware that Nick Marone is once again in Brooke's sphere of influence, those doubts will only grow. Taylor may get increasingly concerned that Ridge is still infatuated with his ex-boyfriend as his protective nature grows. Naturally, this can lead to Ridge going above and beyond to demonstrate his level of commitment. At one point, Eric Forrester minimized the commitment by reminding Ridge that he wasn't wedded to Taylor or even engaged to her. Ridge might choose to change that and persuade both himself and Taylor that he can really give it his best for her. It's not a given that Taylor will accept Ridge's offer to settle down and start a new chapter in their marriage. By the end of July, Ridge will be pursuing Brooke across Italy as part of a triangle of love with Nick. How will BNB move us from Ridge's dedication to Taylor to his impending pursuit of Brooke? That speaks volumes about who owns Ridge's heart. If they could give Taylor more authority and eventually get her to dump Ridge, that would be great. With an engagement ring in hand, Ridge might pop the question and ask Taylor if she will marry him again. Maybe Ridge will promise to be faithful forever, but Taylor will protest that she cannot accept this offer. Taylor may insist that Ridge is still fundamentally in love with Brooke and release him to pursue her. Given that Brooke is the person Ridge really wants, it's possible that Taylor may terminate things and essentially grant Ridge permission to be with her. Ridge and Taylor are definitely going to split up, regardless of how everything turns out. Additionally, Brooke is having an accident that will influence Ridge's belief that she is his soulmate. It had been a long time coming, and Taylor Hayes felt it in her bones, an unease, a whisper of emotional déjà vu echoing in the corners of her heart, a sense that history was about to repeat itself, only this time, she would not be a passive participant in its retelling. Standing in front of Ridge Forrester, the man she had loved for decades, the man who had fathered her children and broken her heart more times than she could count, Taylor stared into the familiar blue eyes that once promised forever but always seemed to drift back toward another. Ridge, ever the romantic in chaos, had once again presented her with a ring, with a promise, with that rugged, soft-spoken appeal that could melt the defenses of almost any woman, but this time, Taylor wasn't sure she wanted to melt. This time, she saw past the glitter of commitment and glimpsed the shadow of doubt flickering in Ridge's soul, a shadow shaped like Brooke Logan. She had known it deep inside, that Ridge's declaration of love, no matter how sincere it sounded in the moment, had always been tinged with uncertainty, with unresolved longing, with unfinished business involving the one woman who had always stood between them. Taylor had come so far in her journey, she had healed, or at least tried to, she had reclaimed her professional life, her sense of purpose, her independence. After years of being caught in Ridge's emotional crossfire, she wanted more than recycled promises. She wanted clarity. Stability. A man whose heart wasn't split in two. And so, as Ridge knelt before her, ring glistening under the soft Forrester lighting, Taylor didn't feel joy or excitement. She felt a tightening in her chest, a suffocating uncertainty, as if accepting his proposal would mean stepping back into a cycle of emotional torment she had worked so hard to escape. Ridge, ever oblivious to the depth of her internal struggle, looked up with that hopeful smile, that mix of vulnerability and assurance that only he could pull off, and asked her to marry him, again. The room seemed to freeze, the silence growing loud as Taylor's heart raced. She knew what she had to do, even if it shattered them both. She hesitated, taking a breath so deep it hurt. Ridge, she began, voice soft, trembling, laced with the pain of 1,000 remembered wounds. I can't. The words, once released, seemed to echo like a thunderclap in the still air between them. Ridge's face shifted, confusion, disbelief, then a dawning hurt. You can't, he repeated, as if trying to comprehend a reality he hadn't prepared for. Taylor stepped back, not to distance herself from him but to gather the courage to say what needed to be said. You're asking me to marry you, to commit to you completely, but I can't accept a future built on a foundation that still trembles every time Brooke walks into the room. Ridge stood slowly, the ring still in his hand, and his brow furrowed. That's not fair, Taylor. I love you. I've chosen you. But even as he said the words, his gaze flickered, just briefly, but enough. Taylor saw it, and it confirmed everything she feared. No, she replied gently, firmly. You've tried to choose me. There's a difference. Ridge's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words settling in. Is this about Brooke? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Taylor didn't need to say much, her eyes said it all. The years of rivalry, the endless cycle of Ridge ping-ponging between them, the emotional whiplash, it was always about Brooke. And now that Nick Marone had resurfaced, now that Ridge was watching Brooke from the shadows again, protective and possessive, it had become impossible to ignore. Taylor had seen the way Ridge lit up when Brooke entered the room, the way his attention shifted even when he tried to hide it. She had hoped, foolishly, that time and circumstance might have finally severed those invisible strings between Ridge and Brooke, but no. Brooke was the ghost that haunted every moment of their relationship, even when she wasn't present. Ridge, I love you, Taylor confessed, emotion thick in her voice. And I probably always will. But love isn't enough, not this time. I need peace. I need to know that I'm not just a placeholder while you wrestle with feelings you haven't fully let go of. Ridge stepped forward, his hand reaching for hers, but she pulled back. I deserve more than this. I deserve to be someone's first and only choice, not a consolation prize when things get complicated with Brooke. Ridge's face hardened for a second, as if stunned by the truth he hadn't wanted to confront. He had wanted to believe in the sincerity of his feelings for Taylor, and maybe he did, but it was a complicated love, messy, interrupted, layered with regrets and comparisons and memories of another woman who never quite left his heart. Taylor continued, her voice gaining strength. I've watched you run to Brooke more times than I can count. Italy, Aspen, Paris, doesn't matter the place. When she's in trouble, when she needs you, when she's in pain, you're there. And not just as a friend. It's deeper than that. Maybe it always has been. Maybe you and Brooke are meant to be, and maybe I was too stubborn or too hopeful to admit it. Ridge was silent now, his eyes glistening with unshed emotion. Taylor, you're the mother of my children. We've been through so much. I want this to work. She nodded, tears spilling freely now. I know. But wanting isn't the same as being ready. And I think you're still holding on to something with Brooke that you're not ready to let go of. And I can't marry a man whose heart isn't fully mine. It was the most honest she had ever been with him, and in that honesty, there was a strange freedom. Taylor had always been the calm, nurturing one, the peacemaker, the fixer, but now she was choosing herself. It wasn't an act of bitterness or revenge. It was clarity. A reclaiming of dignity. Ridge, for once, didn't try to argue. Maybe deep down, he knew she was right. Maybe a part of him was already on a plane to Italy, where Brooke was navigating her own storm. Maybe Taylor had just given him the permission he'd been too guilty to ask for. And so, as the silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid things, Taylor reached for the ring in his hand, not to accept it but to close his fingers around it and lower his hand gently. Go, she said softly. Be with her. If she's the one, then don't waste another moment pretending to be with me. The words didn't come easily, but they felt right. Ridge opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. What could he say? That she was wrong? That he didn't still think about Brooke every time he closed his eyes? That he didn't ache when he saw her with Nick again? No. The truth was, Taylor's rejection had opened a door that had always been cracked, now it was wide open. Maybe this was the only way to finally put an end to the triangle that had consumed their lives for decades. Maybe now Ridge could chase Brooke without guilt, without question. Maybe Taylor, in her strength, had finally ended the cycle. Ridge stepped back, his expression unreadable, and then, without another word, he turned and walked away, the engagement ring still clenched in his fist, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down on his shoulders. Taylor stood there long after he left, letting the stillness surround her. There was sorrow, yes, but also peace. She had let go, not just of Ridge but of the dream she had clung to for so long. She had always believed that love could conquer all, but now she saw that love, real love, had to be rooted in certainty, not compromise. As she walked to the window and looked out at the sprawling LA skyline, she thought of her children, of the life ahead, of the possibility of a love not tied to a history of heartbreak. Maybe now she could find that. Maybe now Ridge could finally choose, and maybe this time, he'd get it right. But Taylor? She was done waiting. She had set him free, and in doing so, she had set herself free too. Over a bridge, Taylor and Bill bond. There is going to be a lot of drama when Nick Marone returns to Los Angeles. According to rumors, Taylor Hayes' idyllic reunion with Ridge Forrester is coming to a halt, and you won't believe who she turns to for solace. Below are spoilers for what will happen next on BNB. Ridge Forrester could not have cared less about Taylor's activities when he left Brooke Logan for his other ex-wife. But when he sees Brooke snuggling up to his half-brother Nick Marone, everything will change. Well, that's one way to attract your man. However, what about Taylor? Ridge ignores Taylor while pursuing Brooke. According to previews for Bold and the Beautiful, Ridge will spend the summer competing with his brother Nick for Brooke's affections. Taylor, though, will not remain and watch Ridge pursue his other ex-wife. Taylor has been tired of the bridge triangle for years. Her health concern from broken heart syndrome was the sole factor that brought her and Ridge back together. When Ridge leaves after Brooke, Taylor Hayes will likely be upset and will need someone to vent to. Bill Spencer is rumored to be that shoulder. You can only imagine how shocked Ridge is to learn that Taylor is off canoodling with Dollar Bill and that he has now lost both of his wives. Very soon, Bill Spencer will find himself in the orbit of the Forrester family. Luna Nozawa, his fictitious daughter, is ready to attack Steffi Forrester at any moment. Could Taylor and Bill become close while Steffi was going through this? Taylor and Bill become close. Actually, Bill and Taylor have a lot in common, and it might not be long before they start talking about how many times Brooke and Ridge have left them for another bridge reunion. Since it seems to work for Brooke, it's also possible that Taylor is merely using Bill to incite jealousy in Ridge. Do you believe that Don Diamont and Rebecca Budig would get along well? Is it possible that Taylor and Bill are genuinely attracted to one another because they are fed up with Ridge leaving them? Taylor Hayes stood at the edge of her Malibu balcony, the soft crash of Pacific waves echoing through her thoughts like the recurring heartbreak she had come to accept as a natural rhythm of her life. Her latest reunion with Ridge Forrester, her supposed soulmate, her destiny as people mockingly called it now, was already unraveling at the seams, much like every other version of their tangled love story. It had begun with promises. Promises of change, of devotion, of a clean break from the toxic cycle that was Ridge and Brooke. For a time, Taylor had believed him. She had dared to dream again, allowed herself to picture a future where she was not the second choice, the fallback option when Brooke's loyalty wavered. But dreams had a cruel way of dissolving in Los Angeles, especially when Ridge Forrester was involved. So when she heard that Ridge had been spotted at Il Giardino sharing wine and whispered laughs with Brooke Logan, and Nick Marone, of all people, looming in the background like a ghost from a past no one wanted to relive, Taylor knew it was over before it had even properly begun. Still, she hadn't cried. Not at first. The tears would come later, as they always did. For now, she sat quietly with the weight of history pressing against her ribs, sipping red wine and wondering if the universe had a vendetta against her. And that's when he appeared. Not like a knight on a white horse, no. More like a polished businessman in a navy suit and sharkskin grin, Bill Spencer. Dollar Bill. The very definition of danger in a tux. She hadn't seen him in weeks, not since their last awkward run-in at Forrester Creations during one of Hope's Eternal fashion debuts. She remembered their exchange being civil but icy. She hadn't expected to see him again so soon, or for him to care. And yet, here he was, uninvited but not unwelcome, standing in her doorway with a smirk that was oddly comforting. I heard Ridge ran back to Brooke, he said with no preamble, no sugarcoating, just the brutal truth in its rawest form. Taylor blinked. That's your idea of a greeting? She asked, forcing a tight smile. Bill stepped inside like he owned the place, as he tended to do with every room he entered. He poured himself a drink, not waiting for an invitation, and sat down across from her like they were old war buddies reuniting over battle wounds. "I figured you could use some honesty. Lord knows nobody else in your circle offers it," he said, sipping his scotch. There was something in his eyes, less smugness than usual, more empathy. It was unsettling. Taylor studied him, suspicious. "Why are you here, Bill?" she asked finally. He shrugged. "Because I know what it's like to get bridged." That made her laugh, an unexpected, unfiltered sound that took her by surprise. "Bridged?" she repeated. Bill nodded. "Yeah. That special kind of hell where Ridge and Brooke decide they're meant to be together and the rest of us get tossed aside like last season's fashion line." Taylor sipped her wine again, feeling the edge of her bitterness soften. "You too, huh?" she said. "More times than I care to count," he replied. "Brooke and I have history. So do Ridge and I. But somehow, no matter what either of us does, they always circle back to each other. Like moths to a dumpster fire." She chuckled again, this time letting her shoulders relax. There was something cathartic about talking to someone who got it. Not just intellectually, but viscerally. Bill, despite his checkered past and egocentric ways, understood the exhaustion of being collateral damage in the never-ending saga of Bridge. As the evening wore on, their sarcasm turned to stories. Taylor told him about her struggle to rebuild her identity outside of being Ridge's fallback. Bill opened up about how his obsession with Brooke had nearly ruined him more than once. They were different people, her a healer, him a destroyer, but there was common ground in the wounds they bore. The more they talked, the more Taylor realized how long it had been since she felt seen, not as Ridge's ex or Brooke's rival or even Steffi's mother, but as Taylor. The woman. The person. The soul. Over the next few weeks, their accidental evening turned into a routine. Late-night phone calls. Occasional lunches. Texts that started as check-ins and evolved into flirtations. Steffi raised an eyebrow when she saw Bill's name flash across her mother's phone, but said nothing, for now. Even Katie seemed to notice, her eyes narrowing whenever Taylor entered the room. "Are you and Bill?" she asked one afternoon, trailing off. Taylor's response was simple and honest, "We're figuring things out." But things escalated quickly, as they do in the world of Forrester, Spencer, and Logan. When Luna Nozawa revealed the truth about her lineage and chaos exploded at Forrester Creations, Taylor and Bill found themselves at the center of a storm. Steffi was under attack, not just from a family scandal but from public scrutiny. Bill, fiercely protective despite his hands being less than clean in the situation, stood by Taylor's side through it all. Their bond deepened, not just from shared history but from shared action. Bill wasn't just talking anymore, he was showing up. And that's when Ridge noticed. First it was a comment at a meeting, didn't realize Bill Spencer was a therapist now, followed by casual interrogations masked as small talk. But Ridge wasn't subtle. Jealousy burned from his every word. One evening, after catching Taylor and Bill leaving Il Giardino hand in hand, Ridge cornered her. "You're seriously dating Bill Spencer?" he spat, the disgust palpable. Taylor didn't flinch. "Why not? You're dating my rival." Again. Ridge looked lost for a moment, like he hadn't expected her to fight back. "You're better than this," he said. "No, Ridge. I'm better without you," she replied. From that moment, things changed. Not just for Taylor and Bill, but for the entire dynamic of their tangled social web. Brooke was caught off guard. Katie was livid. Even Steffi, for all her independence, didn't know how to feel about her mother dating a man who once tried to destroy her father's empire. But Taylor held firm. She wasn't asking for anyone's approval. She wasn't chasing redemption. She was simply choosing herself and, strangely, Bill Spencer. Together, Taylor and Bill were an unlikely pair. Fire and ice. Brains and brawn. intuition and instinct. But they worked. Maybe because they both knew what it felt like to be someone's second choice. Maybe because they were tired of fighting for the love of people who only wanted them when it was convenient. Or maybe, just maybe, because in each other they found the kind of brutal honesty and flawed affection that real love is built on. The town buzzed with gossip. Quinn rolled her eyes. Eric offered a polite but pointed, "I hope you know what you're doing." Hope Logan, always the optimist, said maybe love could bloom in the most unexpected places. But none of it mattered to Taylor anymore. Not really. For the first time in a long time, she was walking into a relationship with her eyes wide open, not blinded by nostalgia or manipulated by history. Just honest. Present. Real. Bill, for his part, surprised everyone by dialing down his alpha antics. He listened more, raged less, and even attended one of Taylor's therapy retreats, though he mocked every minute of it. Still, he showed up. He stayed. And that, Taylor realized, was more than Ridge had ever done. Their bond was forged not in fantasy, but in fire. In the ashes of failed marriages, broken promises, and perpetual love triangles. They didn't pretend to be perfect. They didn't claim destiny. They weren't looking for fairy tales. Just peace. Connection. A soft place to land after decades of emotional warfare. And maybe, just maybe, a love story that wasn't written by fate, but chosen, deliberately, defiantly, beautifully, by two people tired of being pawns in the bridge game.